Dragon Ball, I am a digitized Saiyan. Chapter 21. The amount of endangered blood defined in the Dragon Ball Universe OL online game is a near-death state that does not belong to the Saiyans. Ying-Chi swallowed a little nervously, and then threw the fairy bean into his mouth. After chewing it twice, it is a bit similar to the texture of cucumber potato chips. It's very fragrant and refreshing. With a grunt, Ying-Chi finally swallowed the fairy bean. Then nervously stared at the blue screen interface in front of him. Ground. A very strange feeling filled his body. It's like a hot summer day, and suddenly I came to the North Pole. Chill and relax. However, this feeling comes and goes faster. In just the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace. The next moment, Ying-Chi noticed. The combat power value on the blue screen interface quickly rose, and it came to 1724 all of a sudden. However, it soon returned to 1530 because of the weight suit. At the same time, the level and health bar behind the combat power value have also changed. It became Ying-Chi, 1530 Saiyan Intermediate Lower Rank Warrior. Health bar, 12,936 12,936. Carefully scanning the information that had undergone a great change, Ying-Chi couldn't help but fall into ecstasy. The combat power had indeed doubled. Even the combat power of 500 kg under the weight of the load surpassed that of Raditz. This is a testament to the fact that he has completely succeeded in cheating through the Saiyan's unique endangered restoration cheats. And at the same time, it can also be confirmed that the endangered blood volume is the endangered state of the data incarnation. In this way, with a large number of fairy beans in his hand, he can completely have a rocket-like soaring level. Even if the limit of this cheating method can only reach Super Saiyan 2, but for Ying-Chi, this is quite enough. As long as he cooperates with his data incarnation and the profit of the plot, it is definitely more than enough to save his life in the Dragon Bead world. At the same time that Ying-Chi was excited, he was on the lower floor, because of the abnormal situation that Ying-Chi had drunk the super divine water, and the Carlin Immortal, who was looking for ancient books, sat on the ground in surprise. Attracted the eyes of Pasta and Lan Fang at the same time. How can this be? It doesn't make sense at all. The breath has skyrocketed so much again. Who the hell is he? Muttered the Carlin Immortal sitting on the ground with a look of incredulity. Top floor Basilica. Ying-Chi, who calmed down, his first thought was to ignore the crazy combat power of 3721, and first reach the second realm of Super Saiyan. However, when it came time to actually implement it, Ying-Chi hesitated. If you do this, it will be absolutely fine for a few days to become the first in the universe at the current point in time. After all, the Demon Buu is sealed, the god of destruction Bruce is sleeping, Weiss wants to protect Bruce, and Brawly is still gnawing spider feet on the planet Wampa. And Super 2 can definitely beat Frieza, Beulah and the Kurdish King. However, it doesn't mean much. Inch didn't think he was Brawly, and he was a natural martial arts wizard like Zama's. The short-term strength has skyrocketed, and the foundation is inevitably not solid and the upper limit is limited. What's more, even Zama's, a rare martial arts wizard among the king gods of the realm, after his strength skyrocketed, the same realm was still beaten by Vegeta in red and blue switching mode. This is also a major drawback after the rapid upgrade, and it is powerless to compete with the realm. Wizards didn't want that. The later you go, the slower the realm level up. The combat power of the same realm is undoubtedly quite important. And the combat power of the same realm is obviously directly linked to the foundation. The foundation is not solid, and I want to be awesome in the later stage. That's just delusional. Moreover, the environment is quite peaceful now. There is no crisis at all. In a hurry to increase the combat power, he can only fight the Frozen Clan. Do you want him to sacrifice his foundation to avenge the Saiyans? What kind of international jokes? Of course, the most important reason is that Ying-Chi feels that the more solid the foundation, the greater the possibility of breaking through the Freedom Extreme Intention Gong in the future. Let's practice slowly in the early stage. It's still early, and there's no need to take any risks. Quote. Ying-Chi finally made a decision. After the fairy beans and the fairy bean cultivation techniques were in hand, Ying-Chi took his farewell to the Karen Immortals. With Pasta and Lan Fang, according to the plan in his mind, Yingqi was originally going to go directly to the temple of the celestial god further above the Kalen Tower. But before leaving, he remembered another thing that was not light or serious. After a brief consideration, he flew down the Kalanta with the two girls first. Seeing the three of them falling straight down, the Beulah family was startled. One by one, they subconsciously ran over to catch them. Witnessing this scene, Yingqi nodded secretly, feeling that it was still meaningful for him to deliberately run this trip. Yingqi then landed safely with Pasta and Lan Fang in his arms. Beulah stepped forward and asked in surprise and eagerness, "Mr. Yingqi, you have already climbed the Kalen Tower, right?" Yingqi didn't explain much, just smiled and nodded. Beulah couldn't help but be envious and admired. Climbing Kalanta can be described as his lifelong wish and dream. A few days ago, although he had said that Inch might be able to climb the Kalim Tower, it was only a good wish. In fact, he thought in his heart that no one in this world could do it. Unexpectedly, a few days later, he himself was slapped in the face. Not only did Inki come down, but he also brought him to climb the Kalen Tower, where he saw the shocking news of the Karlin immortals. Bella's father also sighed from the bottom of his heart, "It's amazing. I didn't expect that in my lifetime, I would see someone who could actually climb the Kalen Tower. In this life, even if you die, it's worth it." Quote. After speaking, he couldn't help but cry. Bella's family has guarded the sacred place of Karen for generations, and this special complex is difficult for others to understand. Inki noticed that Pasta and Lan Fang had been pulled aside by Bella's wife to whisper to the side. He bluntly said to Bella, "There is something I must remind you. I see that your wife's face is not very good. If you have time, take her to the hospital for a checkup as soon as possible." Quote. Combined with the fact that Upa is very young and has no mother at a young age, Inki can be pretty sure that Bella's wife's illness is not light. What? Hearing this, Beulah and Bella's father's faces changed in unison. Bra did not doubt the truth of Inki's words, and the person who was able to climb the Kalanta was already about the same status as the Karlin immortals in his mind. He just turned his head uncomfortably and said, "Thank you for the reminder, Mr. Inki, but we don't have any money." Inki had expected this. He took out an all-purpose capsule from his pocket and handed it to him. "Money is not a problem. There's 10 million souls in cash. Treat it as if I had lent it to you. It's better to return it slowly in the future." Quote. Listening to Inki's words, Beulah and Bella's father both knelt down gratefully. In the process of flying towards the temple of the heavenly god, Prima, who was held in Inchi's arms, asked curiously, "What did you just say? Why did Beulah and them both kneel down?" Inki explained briefly. Pasta nodded repeatedly, "I can't agree with it. Zella, she's a kind lady." Lan Fang suddenly pillowed her head on Yingqi's hun mouth, and said with sincere admiration, "Brother Yingqi is really a good person. Great good guy." A strange look flashed in Yingqi's eyes. The celestial temple is higher above the Karlin temple. The air here is naturally thinner. It doesn't matter if Yingqi's digital body is informed. Both Pasta and Lan Fang are just the most ordinary human beings. It didn't take long for the two to be short of breath. Inki had anticipated this situation in advance. The universal capsule is equipped with an oxygen tank. It's just that it's not yet at the point where it needs to be used immediately. The two of them did not make this request, but looked around with wide eyes and curiosity. Look at this temple where the gods are said to live. The shape of the entire temple of the heavenly god presents a complete semicircular sphere. The ground is a huge, large circle, and some flowers and trees are planted around the edges, such as coconut trees, lilies, and many more. And in the center of this great circle, stands a majestic and solemn temple. The three of them were standing not far from the hallway of the temple at the moment. Because Yingqi's body has fully adapted to the weight of 500 kg, he is preparing to change into a 1T weight jacket on the spot. Both Patsta and Lan Fang had seen him wearing only underwear at home, so they were naturally surprised. The three of them waited in place for a while. Lan Fang suddenly asked a little strangely, "Are we not doing anything, just standing here and waiting?" Yingqi has already put the last black jacket weighing 250 kg on his body, and by the way, he took a look at the blue screen interface. After wearing a 1T heavyweight jacket, the combat strength value dropped to 1336 again. Wen Yan replied casually, "Don't be in a hurry, it won't be long before God's servants will come out to meet us." Quote. As soon as Yingqi's words fell, a short and fat figure had already stepped out of the shadow of the corridor. He was dressed in ancient Egyptian-style clothes, black as ink, without eyebrows, with two spherical eyes, no nose like Clint, and scarlet like two red sausages, and a very happy look. But Yingqi was clear. This divine servant, who is older than the Karen immortals, although he looks funny, is actually very amazing. The combat power value is as high as 1030. It can be said that it is the strongest human being on the planet except for Yingqi. Even God is no match for him. Yingqi still folded his hands and saluted him. "Hello Mr. Bobo, take the liberty to come and disturb him." "I'm so sorry." Quote. Bobo said calmly, "Your conversation with the cat immortals in the Karlin temple. God and I already know that. Why did you come to the temple of the heavenly gods? We don't have fairy beans here." Quote. Yingqi politely replied, "I came to the temple of the heavenly god for three main purposes. The first is to use the super divine water and the water of life in the temple of the heavenly god. The second is to stay in the temple of the heavenly god to practice, and the third is to learn the Namek language." Quote. Although the super divine water in the temple of the heavenly god has the same name as the super divine water in the Karen immortals, the two are completely different things. The former can dissolve all toxins, such as Babe's poisonous eggs and Dr. Lecky's death breath, all of which can be completely removed, while the latter can only trigger the potential of the drinker. As for the eau de vie, it is an incredible liquid. Once any plant has it, it can thrive immediately. Yingqi was going to use it to water the roots of the fairy beans. In this way, the survival rate of transplanted fairy beans must be very high. In addition to this, Bobo also used it, ordinary clay, and one of Sun Wukong's hairs to make a dummy similar to Sun Wukong. Although he only has 1 day of life, because of the relationship between the higher realms, he can even defeat Sun Wukong with the same combat power. When Bobo heard this, there was still no expression on his face. "You know a lot. However, I advise you to give up and leave. The things of the gods cannot be given to mortals casually. Moreover, I believe that with your current strength, you are enough to defeat the great demon king of Vic. There is no need to practice anymore. As for the Namek language, it will not be in the temple of heaven." Quote. Listening to Bobo's words, Pasta and Lan Fang's hearts tightened, couldn't help but look at Yingqi. They could all see that this divine servant was a little rejected. What they don't know is that Bobo is well aware that his good friend Tenjin and the great demon king of Vic are in a symbiotic relationship. If Yingqi wants to kill the great demon king of Vic, he means that he wants to kill his good friend Tenjin. Bobo naturally doesn't have a crush on Yingqi. Rejected by Bobo, Yingqi's expression remained unchanged. "Mr. Bobo, as far as I know, there are many more in the Super God Water Temple. I just need a can. In addition, the water of life is just Mr. Bobo, and it doesn't make much sense for you to revive those burnt flowers and plants. But in my hands, it will come in handy. Maybe it will save many lives in the future." Quote. Bobo ignored it, but said, "Please go back." Yingqi smiled slightly, and said with righteousness, "I am here for the well-being of the entire earth and even the entire universe of human beings. If the gods are just such selfish beings who only care about themselves, then they are not worthy of being gods. I will also use my hands to take it myself." Quote. Bobo's eyes narrowed. "You want to do it?" Yingqi nodded, "Not bad." Bobo was slightly angry. "Arrogant, you are so rude." After saying that, he rushed towards Yingqi. Yingqi slanted slightly, and first calmly released a soft force, pushing Pasta and Lan Fang beside him to the side. Then he snapped and caught Bobo's right fist. The 5 fingers of the left palm are bent into a pack. Yingqi still calmly persuaded, "Mr. Bobo, it's still too late to stop. Although your realm is slightly higher than mine, my absolute strength at the moment is far superior to yours." Quote. Bobo didn't speak, and his left fist slammed into Yingqi's face. I wanted to force him to let go of his left hand. Seeing this, Yingqi smiled coldly, leaned back, and at the same time suddenly lifted up with his right kick, kicking Bobo's jaw hard. Kicked it into the air. Forthwith, the phantom flickered, and he was no longer visible in the same place. Reappeared, had come to the sky above Bobo, clasped his hands together, and smashed hard against his hun mouth. The next moment, Bobo's body, like a shooting star, fell straight to the ground, and smashed a small crater. After 2 seconds, Bobo, who was stained with dust on his body, jumped up like a spiral, stood firmly, put on his crooked hat, and said in a shy tone, "Bobo is really a little angry." Quote, Bobo's body was as fast as thunder, and he rushed straight towards Yingqi, and his hands swung out 100 punches in an instant, but all of them were easily dodged by Yingqi. After another straight punch missed, Bobo kicked out the right kick at great speed. But he's fast, and inches faster. At the moment when Bobo kicked out, through Chi, Yingqi, who had already sensed his next move, raised his foot in advance and kicked on his right foot at once. Bobo's center of gravity suddenly lost and he fell forward. Where would Yingqi be polite? His left elbow slammed into his neck, smashing him to the ground. While Bobo's head was dizzy and confused, Yingqi had already put his hands together and condensed the turtle-sect Qigong wave. Stop! Just when the snow-white Qigong wave in Yingqi's hand had condensed into a volleyball, another figure appeared in the corridor. The one who spoke out was naturally the current owner of the Temple of the Heavenly God, Bik himself. Yingqi had no intention of killing Bobo in the first place, unless he was crazy and didn't want to learn the King Fist of the world, so he might be sick and end up on the path of the gods. Hearing this, he took advantage of the situation and aimed the turtle faction Qigong wave at a higher altitude. The Qigong wave that flew out 100 meters suddenly exploded. While causing dazzling white light, it also caused the Heavenly God Temple to have a wind of level 6 or higher for the first time. Although Bobo was hit, Yingqi still looked very polite. "Lord Tenjin, I'm very sorry, I was rude." Quote, the situation is stronger than the man. Although the god was very angry in his heart that Yingqi had injured his good friend Bobo, he still swallowed this resentment in front of Yingqi, who he couldn't beat at all. "I don't blame you. Maybe I didn't make things clear to Bobo. I have granted you all the requests you have made." Quote, "Thank you, Celestial." Having reached his goal, Yingqi immediately stepped aside. The two daughters, Pasta and Lan Fang, who had been worried, immediately surrounded them when they saw this. The celestial god came to Bobo and examined his injuries carefully. It turned out that Bobo was only slightly injured, and he could see that he was very measured, and he couldn't help but change his opinion of Yingqi a little. The gods carried Bobo on his back and took him back to the temple to recuperate. Later, according to the agreement, he took out all the super divine water and water of life that Yingqi wanted. Yingqi put it all away carefully. The main hall of the temple of the heavenly gods. The god first made a cup of fragrant tea for all three of Yingqi, and then sat down opposite Yingqi. "I just heard you say that one of the purposes is to learn Namek. What language is Namek?" The Nameks could hear very small voices from 200 meters away, and Yingqi was not at all surprised that the Celestials knew what they were talking to Bobo. So he replied with a smile, "It's the language of your hometown, Tenjin." The god was stunned, and the teacup in his hand also fell to the ground and shattered. "What do you mean?" Yingqi nodded and affirmed, "As far as I know, you are not an earthling. Rather, it came from the distant planet Namek." Quote, he knew that when Tianshan was a child, he had hit his head like Sun Wukong, and he didn't remember any of his previous memories. "Really?" The god clenched his fists in excitement and suddenly lowered his head. "Thank you for telling me the news. The doubts that have been buried in my heart have finally been answered." Quote, Yingqi said again, "If you want to go back to Namek, I can take you with you in a while. By the way, the Namek spaceship that carried you to Earth is now in my hands." Quote, "It seems that your dream prediction ability is really quite amazing. I even know about it." The god looked up in surprise, his eyes flickered for a moment, and then he said, "Thank you for your kindness. After all, I am now the god of the earth, and I must take care of the earth at all times." Quote, this answer was already expected by Yingqi, and when he returned to his hometown, he threw it out purely to sell it. "By the way, I have one more thing I want to ask you. Did you make a set of black star dragon orbs and hide them in the depths of the temple before you were separated from the great demon king?" Yingqi asked this question to get this set of black star dragon beads, but it was only for a secondary purpose. What's more, it is to confirm whether the current red star dragon beads on the earth may have dark changes through the existence of this set of black star dragon beads. After all, the Dark Dragon Bead is an anti-heaven existence that can give birth to a super 1-star dragon that can beat the super race 4. It's not okay if you don't pay attention in advance. The god looked at Ying-Chi again in amazement. You even know this, I'm curious now, what else do you don't know? However, this set of dragon beads cannot be used lightly, because it. Before the gods finished speaking, Ying-Chi had already continued, don't worry, I'll find a no man's planet to use it. Quote. The gods were speechless. However, what Ying-Chi is most concerned about now is not about this set of black star dragon beads, but about the red star dragon beads. Since the black star dragon bead exists, the possibility of the red star dragon bead being darkened is not nothing. Ying-Chi naturally asked about the negative energy of the red star dragon bead with concern. After listening to Ying-Chi's description, the god of heaven, who is the creator, is a little confused. Is there such a thing? Inch shook his head. It seems that the gods are not aware of this either. Otherwise, with his temperament and love for the second home of the earth, he would definitely warn Sun Wukong and others in advance. And Vic, who is in harmony with him, should also know. But as it turned out, Vic was also not clear. Although the darkness was still unknown, Inky still reminded himself inwardly of it. Once it is found that there are signs of rupture in the red star dragon bead, it will be sealed directly. Until his own combat power can crush the super 1-star dragon. Inky then offered to keep the black star dragon bead for the Celestials. The reason is that it is placed in the temple of the heavenly gods, and it is not safe. Although the gods were not happy, they could only stare dryly when their skills were inferior to others and they were unwilling to completely tear their faces. After that, Inky lived in the temple of the celestial god semi-forcedly. While learning Namek, I worked hard to make up for my own foundation. Inky is clear. He was able to defeat Bobo easily before, and it was all because of his sheer power. If he was on the same level as Bobo, he would probably be the one who was hanged. Bobo's realm is very high. Ying-Chi felt that Bobo should have comprehended the rudiments of a little freedom and extreme will. The proof is that Sun Wukong, who has been guided by him, inadvertently found that his right fist would take the initiative to attack the enemy when he was fighting against the fake Wukong created by the Water of Life. Therefore, Inky wants to steal a teacher from Bobo. But, probably because he was abused, Bobo has always had a grudge against him. Stay away from him. After releasing his kindness many times to no avail, Ying-Chi also gave up. According to Bobo's guidance to Sun Wukong in the anime, he drew a scoop according to the gourd. The first step is to forget about one's own existence and imagine oneself as a rock. This is quite difficult for a modern person with a complex mind. Even if Ying-Chi is a digital body, it is still difficult to do it when he has not comprehended this layer. Nature. He sent Bobo through the machine in the temple to the home of the super-capable Moose in an unknown mountain on Earth. At this time, Moose had just given birth to his first child with his wife Egger. But it doesn't matter. Inch focused on his fisherman father. That is, the folk master in the anime who obviously sits next to Wukong, but Wukong treats him as a stone. It took Ying-Chi 2 whole months, through observation, repeated pondering, and personal verification, to finally master this special skill. After the first step, let yourself be as silent as the sky, Ying-Chi immediately started the second step of cultivation. That is, concentrate and feel the subtle vibrations of the air in the space, and finally achieve the effect of faster than lightning. Generally speaking, the means of capturing the opponent's attack is more efficient than the eyes through the chi, and the higher level than the chi is the vibration of the air, because the moment the air is moved, the vibration of the air has been completed. If you can catch this extremely subtle vibration of the air, you will be able to predict your opponent's next move even more than chi. After spending this time together, Ying-Chi knew that Bobo had actually reached this state. The reason why he lost to Ying-Chi last time was because even if he predicted Ying-Chi's next move, his body still couldn't keep up with the reaction speed at all. The gap is too big, and it's in vain. If Bobo could stand on the same level as him, this ability would be quite terrifying. It can be said that before the fight started, Bobo was already invincible. Therefore, this ability must be mastered by Ying-Chi. Of course, it is impossible to succeed just by thinking and by messing around without rules. Therefore, Ying-Chi still decided to follow the cultivation method in the anime. Let Bobo pass through that magical machine and send himself to the Kolo Mountain. Then use the Divine Crown's ability to attract lightning to master this special ability. Yingqi, who wore the Divine Crown for the first time, was immediately keenly aware that the air in the space had already vibrated significantly before the lightning bolts in the layers of dark clouds on the top of the mountain took shape and slashed towards the Divine Crown with full hatred value. After being struck by lightning a few more times, Yingqi suddenly realized that those obvious air vibrations were the tracks of lightning that were about to take shape. As long as you master this trajectory, you will naturally be able to avoid lightning in advance. As a data-based body, Yingqi immediately achieved 100% lightning avoidance after breaking through this mystery. Because the air vibrations are so obvious. But it didn't take long for Yingqi to be proud, and the lightning on Keluo Mountain seemed to be conscious, and the air vibration caused in advance was exaggerated by more than half. Inch was soon hit again. He had to concentrate on the subtle vibrations of the air in the space. That's it. Whenever Inchi adapts to a certain subtle degree of air vibration, it often doesn't take long for the air vibration caused by lightning to become more and more subtle. Finally, when the attenuation is no longer small, there will be dense crossover lightning. It's hard to guard against. Yingqi practiced back and forth between Keluo Mountain and the Temple of the Heavenly Gods, and it was a year in a flash. It wasn't until the lightning on Kolo Mountain could no longer hit him that it stopped completely. During this year, Yingqi only took Xian Bean once. It's when you're dodging dense cross lightning and your HP is directly split to 5%. Then Yingqi naturally carefully grinded his HP to 3%, and made a breakthrough in the endangered recovery of the Saiyans. Therefore, this year, Yingqi not only mastered the subtle air sensing, but also made a leap forward in his combat power and blood volume. 14 months ago, Yingqi's combat strength was 1724. Although he did not deliberately improve his combat effectiveness, due to the 1T weight-bearing clothes on his body, it slowly rose to 1800. And after taking the endangered recovery of fairy beans, it suddenly tripled to 5400. The combat power of this level has already surpassed the normal Saiyan Naba. Moreover, he crossed the two levels of high-level lower-level warriors and low-level intermediate warriors in a company, and was promoted to middle-level intermediate warriors. Thanks to this, Yingqi's HP also ushered in a small spike. 14 months ago, his blood volume was 12,936, which had risen to 16,296 through a normal diet. Breaking through to the highest level of lower-level warriors, the HP doubled to 32,592. Breaking through to a low-level intermediate warrior again, his HP tripled to 97,776. In the end, he broke through to the mid-level intermediate warrior, and his HP doubled again, and finally his total HP skyrocketed to 195,552. After seeing that the amount of blood had become so abundant, Yingqi couldn't help but die. Use the Turn Turtle Faction Qigong Wave to directly blow up all his body below the Hun department. After the lower half of his body rose again, Yingqi found that his blood volume had only dropped by 1000 points. The highest death damage is only 1000 points, so you can imagine what this close to 200,000 HP data means. That's almost the same as 200 lives of ordinary people. It's also Yingqi's character who is naturally cautious, and if he changes to another traverser, it won't become a big wave. The style of painting will definitely mutate into, "Come on, kill me with your last name. Uncle, I'm afraid of everything, but I'm not afraid of death. Zamas, I heard that you have an immortal body, why don't we compare it?" But the amount of blood has thickened, and it is not all advantages. At least in the future, it will be a bit troublesome to enter the endangered state. It may take half a day to grind blood. In short, it was the trouble of happiness. The second step, faster than lightning, was also the third and final step of the practice for Yingqi after the successful completion of the cultivation of the ability of the Prophet of the Unknown. It is to travel back in time through the time house of the Temple of the Heavenly God, and fight with those famous martial artists in the history of the earth one by one to accumulate actual combat experience. Of course, with Yingqi's current combat power value of 5400, even if he has changed into a 2T level weight-bearing suit, his combat power is still as high as 4624. This value, No matter how high the realm of those martial artists is, no matter how good their skills are, they will not be able to beat Yingqi. There is only one way to be killed in seconds. In order to truly gain the improvement of martial arts experience, and in order to verify the results of the past 14 months of cultivation, Yingqi decisively reined in his qi. Using only the state of mind that is quieter than the sky, and the ability of the unpredictable prophets, as well as the skills that have already been mastered, they will learn from these sages. Through one competition after another, Yingqi's combat and martial arts experience was quickly enriched. It also truly integrates the state of mind of quieter than the sky, and the two abilities of unpredictable prophets into actual combat, and at the same time, the use of various skills is also more and more handy. Exactly 10 months. A total of 203 battles, Yingqi's record is to win them all. Also because of these battles, Yingqi also established the belief in victory in his mind. After all, these battles are not suppressed by combat effectiveness, but won at the same level with combat skills and combat experience. In addition, it is worth mentioning that in these battles, Yingqi often has some insights, so he accidentally mastered the 3 new skills of Saiyan Finger Lightsaber, Cannon, and Light Eye. Before he knew it, Yingqi had been in the Temple of the Gods for 2 years. Successfully mastered Namek's language. Naturally, Pasta and Lan Fang stayed in the Temple of the Heavenly God and accompanied him for 2 years. The two have also benefited greatly. As early as 2 years ago, Yingqi advised the two. While planting immortal beans, it is important to practice a certain amount of martial arts. It is best to reach the level of mastering the art of dancing the sky. In this way, whether it is to do things or to escape for your life in the future, you will inevitably have more advantages. Pasta and Lan Fang have completely reached the point of obeying Yingqian. At the mention of Yingqi, the two of them began to practice seriously in their spare time besides watering the fairy bean plants with the water of life, as well as cooking. At first, the two of them exercised in an orderly manner, and they also used the fitness equipment purchased by Yingqi in the villa mansion. Later, Bobo couldn't stand it anymore. He is very uninterested in Yingqi, but he has a good impression of Pasta and Lan Fang. After all, the arrival of the 2 daughters also saved him the effort of cooking and washing dishes. In order to practice Namek's language, Yingqi would bring Tenjin and Bobo over to chat every meal time. The first is to create an environment for Namek, and the other is to enhance the relationship with the gods. Bobo, in particular, has a crush on Pasta. Because he thought that Pasta's meals and snacks were so delicious. So he offered to help guide them in their practice. Bobo has cultivated a famous teacher like Sun Wukong, who defeated the young Vic. Under his careful guidance, both Pasta and Lan Fang have made amazing progress. After 2 years, Pasta's combat power value has become 83, and Lan Fang's combat power has reached 105 because her martial arts talent is better than Pasta's. Naturally, I learned the art of dancing the sky. Considering that both of them have mastered Qi, Yingqi also gave the banana fan that he didn't need on his body and could only really work through Qi, as well as Chaoshanaya, to the 2 women. Pasta was a little weaker and was assigned a stronger banana fan. Lan Fang got Chaoshanaya. Both of them were very fond of the weapons that Yingqi had given them. Also, the fairy bean plant cultivated by the two. From this month, it has already come to fruition. It will be harvested in another month. Both of them had 10 fairy beans on their vines. That's more than the old fairy bean vine of the Carlin Immortals. The 3 goals proposed by the original arrival at the Temple of the Heavenly God have all been achieved now. The only thing that the Temple of the Celestial God still has to remember is the House of Time and Spirit, and the magic carpet in Bobo's hand that can teleport to all parts of the earth. The former has not yet reached the critical moment that needs to be used, and in the case of the latter, Yingqi is not the kind of person who can't move his steps when he sees a treasure, and his relationship with Bobo has just turned around, so there is no need to make twists and turns again for a dead thing. Since there is no need for anything, Yingqi naturally proposes to take his leave. The gods and Bobo did their best to keep them. But Yingqi knew it wasn't because of him, but because of Pasta's masterful cooking. Of course, Yingqi couldn't let them get their wish. After leaving the Temple of the Heavenly God, Yingqi took Pasta and Lan Fang to visit the Carlin Immortals in the Carlin Temple. After a pleasant exchange, he said goodbye again. Then, the three of them went to meet the Beulah family at the foot of Corinta. Blah's wife, Zella, had just given birth to Uppa. Now Zella's face is healthy and full of life, and it is clear that her illness has been eradicated. For Yingqi, the great benefactor, the Beulah family is very grateful. Not only did they warmly retain them, but they also brought out the best things to entertain. Pasta and Lanfang couldn't resist Beulah's mother's invitation, so Inch could only stay with them for 2 more days. It was sunrise on the 3rd day that the three of them set off again. In order to continue to train Pasta and Lanfang, Yingqi accompanied the two of them to abandon convenient means of transportation such as flying machines and cars, and did not use the dance technique, so they relied on 2 kicks to rush forward. At a speed of 10 meters per second, the three of them ran wildly across the field. Lanfang suddenly asked, "Brother Yingqi, where are we going all the way east?" Before setting off, Yingqi had already locked on to the target through the energy detector. "We are going to find a warrior named Crane Immortal. There is a skill he has mastered that is very valuable. I want to get my hands on it." Quote. Hearing this, Pasta couldn't help but interject and said, "Yingqi, there's a question that has been in my mind for a long time. It's just that I want to ask you, you're already so strong. Not even Bobo and the Celestials can beat you. Why are you still so tirelessly pursuing power?" Yingqi turned his head, looked at her with a smile and said, "What's the matter?" Pasta's face turned red, and she hurriedly said, "No, no. How can I get tired of getting along with you and doing things? I just think it's weird to always run around like this." Quote. Lanfang also said, "Brother Yingqi, I also want to know the reason." Yingqi replied with a straight face, "The reason why I didn't tell you before was because I was afraid that you would be frightened if you knew that you were thinking nonsense all day long. Since you want to know so much, I'll tell you. In a few years, the Earth will continue to encounter all kinds of terrifying catastrophes. Many powerful alien enemies will visit the Earth in an endless stream. Among them, a single finger can make the Earth explode. If no one stands up to stop them, all of humanity will perish. Even our universe is in crisis. I'm cultivating hard now to avoid this. When I become the strongest of the 12 universes, we will be able to rest and live in peace." Quote. Inch certainly wasn't as great as he said he was. He just didn't want to be an ignorant ant when he cultivated, and he didn't want to be manipulated by the strong at will. He only wants to protect the Earth because this Earth is somewhat similar to the Earth before he crossed over, and it is more suitable or habitual to live and live. If it really came to the point where he couldn't do anything, he would definitely prepare in advance, and then leave with Pasta and Lanfang. Pasta nodded, "Understood. I will definitely give you my full support in the future." Quote. Lanfang hurriedly said, "And me, I will also fully support Brother Yingqi." Quote. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the three of them arrived at an ancient village. Along the way, the villagers in this village looked listless and lifeless on their faces. From time to time, I sigh and sigh. Yingqi told Pasta and Lanfang not to bother, and then the three of them walked into the only restaurant in the village. Just entered, a middle-aged man in black who was leaning against the window in the east suddenly slammed the wine bowl in his hand on the table, and said loudly, "Those demons run out to grab things every night. They are about to run out of food. We can't go on like this, otherwise, we will starve to death sooner or later." Quote. The old man in brown, who was sitting opposite him, sighed and said, "Even if you don't want to do this, what can you do? The king has spent a lot of money and invited many famous martial artists. But he wasn't the opponent of that Asura at all. If he dared to resist that adult, he would probably be killed directly." Quote. After the old man in brown finished speaking, the surrounding diners also lamented, and each lowered his head. And the middle-aged man in black who was encouraging morale, seeing everyone's reaction, muttered a few words in a low voice and angrily, and sat back helplessly. Hearing the name Asura, Yingqi's eyes lit up. But he didn't say anything, just ordered a table full of dishes, and feasted on Pasta and Lanfang, who were obviously hungry. After Pasta and Lanfang were full, Yingqi suddenly raised his right hand and said, "I am a martial artist who intends to come to defeat that Asura. Which of you is willing to take me to the king?" Quote. The whole restaurant couldn't help but fall silent. Everyone's eyes gathered on Yingqi's body. There was a mixture of anticipation and doubt in his eyes. After a moment of silence, the middle-aged man in black who had just spoken stood up again. I'll lead the way for you. Before leaving the house, Pasta wanted to settle the bill. However, the owner of the restaurant refused to accept it. You are a warrior who came to help the village defeat the Asura, how can I charge you for this meal? When he said this, the restaurateur's eyes were filled with pity. As far as he knew, the martial artists who took the bounty to challenge the Asura were all killed one by one. The middle-aged man in black led the way in front, and the three of Yingqi followed him slowly. The four of them quickly walked out of the village and towards the king's castle. Yingqi looked around and casually asked, by the way, what is the matter with the Asura and the demon you mentioned in the restaurant? The middle-aged man in black was stunned for a moment and almost fell down. Turning around, he looked at Yingqi in surprise. Master, you still don't know what the situation is, are you going to challenge Asura? Yingqi smiled slightly. Of course I know this person, Asura. It's just that he and the demon have been trapped in the gate of the demon realm all the time. Quote. The middle-aged man in black suddenly continued to lead the way. It is said that Asura is looking for some magic sword. He said that the magic sword was somewhere in the world. Therefore, every time night falls, he will push open the door of the demon world and come to the human world to find the magic sword. The demons who followed him took the opportunity to run out and cause chaos in the world. Quote. Inki nodded, not asking any more questions. No wonder Asura ran out so early in advance of the timeline, it turned out to be out to find the magic sword that could jam the gate of the demon world. When he was about to reach the castle on the top of the hill, Lan Fang suddenly exclaimed, pointed in the direction of the south, and said, look. There is a big gate there. Yingqi and Lan Feng then looked in the direction she pointed, and saw that in the middle of several mountains with peaks and mountains, there was a huge mound as large as a tomb, and in the center of the mound, a huge gate about 10 meters high was towering. The surface of the giant gate is carved with mysterious patterns, giving people a sense of mystery and majesty. The middle-aged man in black also turned sideways, and there was both resentment and unconcealed fear in his eyes. That is the gate of the demon realm, and the Asura and the demons who harm people all run out of it. Quote. After the middle-aged man in black told his intentions, the guards of the castle hurriedly lowered the hanging door. When the king and queen received the news, they came out to greet them in person. Although the two of them were younger than they remembered, Yingqi still recognized them at a glance. The standard Western-style king and queen dress with a crown on their heads. The king first expressed his deep gratitude to the three of them for their arrival. Because Yingqi is close to 2 meters tall, he has strong muscles. The king thought that he was a strong martial artist at first sight, and naturally there was no bloody plot like looking down on little Wukong. Then he naturally talked to Yingqi about the reward. As long as he could repel or force the Asura not to be a disaster in the world, he would give a one-time reward of 10 million souls. Of course, Yingqi can't look down on this money. But the money that comes to the door on the initiative will not be stupidly pushed out. This trip was meant to be a no-brainer. Yingqi naturally agreed. When the king saw that Yingqi agreed, he finally breathed a sigh of relief, and ordered, come and lead the three masters down to bathe and rest, and gather up enough energy to cope with the night patrol of the castle tonight. Quote. Wait a minute. Inki frowned and raised his hand. King, you mean to let us keep a vigil in the castle? What does this have to do with Asura? The king was stunned for a moment, and replied honestly, Asura has been coming to my castle every night lately. The queen and I really had a terrible night of worry. Then it's really all up to you, master. Quote. A strange look flashed in Yingqi's eyes, and combined with the news that the middle-aged man in black had said before, he came to a conclusion. That is, the Asura thinks that the magic sword is in the king's castle. Come to think of this. Yingqi Zheng said, King, if you don't want to be harassed by the Asura anymore, you'd better take me to your treasure house. Quote. What? The guards behind Yingqi couldn't help but raise Chang'e nervously. Hugh is rude. The king stopped the guards from moving, and after a while, he finally decided to trust Yingqi, and gritted his teeth, Master, please come with me. Subsequently, the king took Inki, Pasta, and Lanfang on a tour of his treasury. There were gold coins, antiques, and various gems inside, but to Yingqi's surprise, there were no sword-shaped weapons. Out of the treasure house, the king hurriedly asked with concern, "Master, have you found anything?" Yingqi shook his head. "Maybe I'm wrong. You don't even have a sword weapon here." Quote. Hearing Yingqi mention this, the king's face suddenly became strange. "Master, there is a strange sword in the castle. But it's ordinary, and it shouldn't be the magic sword that Asura wants. To be a king, naturally you can't be a fool." When Yingqi mentioned this, he also quickly reacted and linked the reason why Asura came to the castle with the rumors. Seeing his demeanor, Yingqi also became interested. "That's not necessarily. Let's take a look." The king took the three ings to the highest point of the castle. A bluestone sculpture is erected here. The image is an elegant middle-aged man standing with a sword in his hands, looking into the distance. "This is the ancestor who founded our country," the king said. The bronze sword in his hand could be removed. "If there is a special sword in the castle, there is only this one." Quote. After saying that, the king's eyes also showed a look of remembrance. He used to play here when he was a child, and took out the bronze sword to pretend to be a brave. Yingqi walked over, grabbed the hilt of his sword, and drew the bronze sword. Yunqi transferred it inside, and then asserted, "This sword is the magic sword." In front of the demon gate, the king asked with a nervous expression, "Master, are you really not waiting for the Asura to take the initiative to come out? Behind this door, there is the base camp of the demon clan." Yingqi smiled slightly, waved his hand and said, "It doesn't matter. It's just an Asura, I haven't taken it to heart yet. By the way, I went into the demon world to investigate the information I care about." Quote. With that, Inch no longer paid attention to the king, took Pasta and Lan Fang to the door. Then, he turned to the two women and smiled, "Come, try the results of your cultivation." Quote. Pasta and Lan Fang glanced at each other, and Lan Fang, who had a relatively lively personality, immediately raised her hand and said, "I'll come first." With her hands on the door of the demon realm, Lan Fang took a deep breath. Then he exhaled, and his hands suddenly exerted, "Drink." I saw that her forehead was bruised, and her snow-white arms were also tensed. The demon gate soon shook slightly. As time passed, the door of the demon gate opened inch by inch. Behind the three of Yingqi, the king, queen, and many guards not far away only looked dumbfounded. They had also tried to push open the door, but 100 strong men pushed it together, and they still didn't move. Could it be that the fair-skinned and beautiful purple-haired young woman's body contains a strength that cannot be compared with 100 strong men? But, when the gate of the demon realm was pushed inward for nearly 10 centimeters, it suddenly stopped. Lan Fang seemed to be a little exhausted. Seeing this, Pasta hurriedly stepped forward to help. "I'll come too." The two of them worked together, and finally after 5 minutes, they completely pushed the gate of the demon realm open. Meanwhile, applause suddenly sounded behind the three of Yingqi, and it turned out that the king and his party couldn't help but applaud. Seeing that the two women seemed to have exhausted their strength, Yingqi hurriedly walked over, and casually grabbed the gate of the demon realm with one hand. "You're doing a pretty good job." Hearing this, Pasta and Lan Fang looked at each other and smiled. Relaxed hands retracted. Seeing this, the king was worried and wanted to shout, but he was shocked to see that the heavy gate of the demon realm was in Yingqi's single hand, exactly like an ordinary gate, and it was still open there steadily. The king swallowed. He felt that he already knew a little bit about the horrors of Yingqi. Before him, the few martial artists who wanted to brag about rushing into the gate of the demon realm to defeat the Asura, but they couldn't push the door open with all their might. The difference between them is a world of difference. After Pasta and Lan Fang entered the gate of the demon realm, Yingqi also slowly walked in. Inside, there is a tunnel made of huge stones, and because there are candles burning on the left and right walls, it is not completely dark, but it is a little dim. Of course, women are naturally afraid of such an environment, and soon Pasta and Lan Fang held Yingqi's arm left and right. I walked forward for a while. In front of the three of Yingqi, two figures suddenly jumped out. One was as broad as a hill, wearing a two-horned blue hat on his head, with a simple appearance, miserable blue skin, and holding a huge iron rod with a thick bowl in his hand, while the other was slender, wearing a lotus hat on his head, long cherry red hair, delicate features, slightly pink skin, and a sword pinned to his waist. Seeing the two of them, Yingqi smiled slightly. Who else could it be that Gora and Mera, who were not in charge of guarding the passage of the demon realm? He vaguely remembered that the Gora holding a big iron rod seemed to be the #1 strong man in the demon realm. The slender Mera suddenly spoke, "Stop, whoever comes. This is the passage of the demon realm, and it is absolutely not allowed to enter without the pass of the heavenly god and the king of Yama." Quote. Yingqi glanced at Mera a few times, but did not rush to make a move. "It's okay if we don't enter the demon realm. As long as I have achieved my goal, I can turn around and leave." Quote. Gora was annoyed when he heard this, and said, "Humble human, how dare you negotiate terms with us?" Gora. Mera hurriedly stopped Gora, looked at Yingqi, who was always calm, and asked curiously, "Human, what is the purpose of your coming to the demon realm?" Yingqi said lightly, "First of all, what I want to know most is whether Dapra is still in the demon realm now." As soon as Yingqi's words came out, Gora and Mera couldn't help but stop breathing. Who is Dapra? King of the demon realm. The #1 master recognized by the demon realm today as the existence they need to look up to. The human in front of him not only knows his name, but also wants to inquire about his whereabouts. The suspicious eyes of the two looked at Yingqi non-stop, and the curiosity in their hearts for Yingqi increased exponentially. There was a moment of coldness, and then Mila's voice suddenly became a little respectful and replied, "Lord Dapra is no longer in the demon realm for some reason. His whereabouts are unknown." Quote. "Oh, is it? It's still so early in the timeline, and baby has already done it." Inki muttered to himself. Inadvertently revealed a great secret. It's a pity that Gora and Mera at this time didn't understand it at all. "By the way, are Tova and Mira married now?" Inch continued. The confusion in Mera's eyes intensified, and she knew that she was the sister of Dapra, the king of the demon realm, and a famous scientist in the demon realm. "Just Mira." Naturally, she asked, "Who is Mira?" Quote. Inki suddenly realized, which means that Tova has not yet created Mira. "Okay, I'm done with my questions. I am very satisfied with your answers. I have one last request, though. That is, please ask the Asura not to leave the demon world casually and go to the human world." Quote. Speaking of this, Inki glanced at Gora and Mera, who were obviously embarrassed on their faces. "As long as you can guarantee this, we will leave now." Quote. Mera hesitated. She knew very well that by relying on her and Gora, there was no way to stop the arrogant and powerful Asura. "If you can't guarantee it, then please get out of the way." Inki was full of empathy. Although he was responsible for being a guard, under Yingqi's faint gaze, an inexplicable fear still made Mera and Gora obediently get out of the way. If Inki is full of fierce looks, maybe Mera will also call Gora and stop it together. But Yingqi put on a peaceful and approachable appearance. This only sent a chill through Mera's heart. When Inki took Pasta and Lan Fang by the hands of the two girls, Mera asked, "What if the Asura doesn't want to listen to your advice and insists on going to the human world?" Yingqi replied without looking back, "That's easier. I'll just kill him." Quote. Gora and Mera both froze at the same time. After a while, Mera hurriedly said to Gora, "Get out of here, keep up with them. If we don't remind Asura this time, he might really be out of luck." Quote. Gora looked at Mila's rapidly disappearing back and muttered, "That kid is unlucky, what's the matter with us?" Really? Demon Realm Square. This is the first official building that the three of them encounter after entering the gate of the demon realm. Yingqi also remembers that in the anime, Asura robbed the princess of the world, and it was here that the ceremony was held. The demon realm is huge. Inch had no interest in looking for it like a headless fly. Just as he was about to take out the energy detector from the capsule, his heart suddenly moved, and he took another capsule instead. The next moment, in Inki's hand, there is already a sword with a unique shape. The body of this sword is golden, there are 3 pairs of saw hooks on each side of the sword, the hilt is dark blue, and the sword is inlaid with precious stones. This sword is the magic sword. That is, the bronze sword that Inch found at the top of the castle. At that time, Yingqi's luck was sent inside, and the bronze sword was able to accommodate it, which proved that the bronze sword definitely had something else. This is because ordinary metals or materials are gas insulated. Only extraordinary weapons like the banana fan and the Chaoshan Aya can react to qi. When Yingqi violently cracked the bronze skin wrapped on the outside, the magic sword was naturally revealed. Yingqi got this magic sword without much effort. The king already knew that this magic sword was the culprit who attracted Asura. Where did he dare to keep it? And without waiting for Yingqi to speak, he took the initiative to give it to him. Now Yingqi is going to take this bait to hook out the little fish of Asura. Motioning to Pasta and Lan Fang to plug their ears first, Yingqi shouted violently, "Asura, now the magic sword is in my hand, get out if you want. Asura, now that the magic sword is in my hand, get out if you want. Asura, now that the magic sword is in my hand, get out if you want." With Yingqi's breath now, if the voice is deliberately raised, it is like the thunder rolling in the sky, and it can be heard clearly within a radius of 10 miles. While shouting, Yingqi suddenly realized. In fact, you don't need to use the magic sword as bait. As long as you scold like this, Asura will definitely come to the door honestly. After all, he has a small status here in the demon realm. It is impossible to be insulted. Sure enough, when the sound spread, Yingqi clearly noticed that among the countless faint breaths that were rushing here, there was a chi that was obviously stronger than many others, and it was rapidly approaching here. This aura is even stronger than that of the turtle immortal. If nothing else, it should be the Asura he is looking for. Who is it? How dare you come to my demon realm to be presumptuous? Before the Asura could arrive, the voice had already arrived. Obviously not to be outdone. Mara, who had been hiding in the shadows, just wanted to stand up and speak to warn. Asura, who had already arrived in the square, aimed at Yingqi, who was standing in the center of the square with his hands in his hands, and blasted out his hands without hesitation. Yingqi noticed that on the arms of the Asura who jumped towards him, as in the anime, circles of gray airlines appeared. Nearly. With his speed like a turtle crawling slowly, Yingqi could have abused him all over the ground to find his teeth before he could attack. But Yingqi wanted to experience this skill in his hands and see if there was any value in learning. Thereupon, Yingqi stood still. Mila, who was nervously following the battle situation, couldn't help but be stunned when she saw this. Can't you hide? Is it just a parallel import? Asura had a sinister smile on his face. No matter who it was, as long as he fell for his unique secret technique, he would definitely die. Originally, he didn't want to be so ruthless, who let the human in front of him yell and make him lose face. Soon, Asura's fists hit Yingqi's Hun mouth. Time seems to have frozen. After 2 seconds, the smugness on Asura's face had turned into fear. Impossible, you have been hit by my skill, and you will be unharmed. Yingqi looked at him expressionlessly, and said lightly, if someone else took your blow, it is estimated that they would have died. It's barely a bit creative. However, I wasn't much interested. That is, you have no value in living now. Quote. As Yingqi described, Asura's pupils continued to dilate. Mara finally couldn't help but say, please let go. Quote. Before Mara could finish speaking, 2 rays of energy had already shot out from Yingqi's eyes, cross-hitting Asura's throat. The eye of light quickly passed through his throat, and the remaining energy still killed many unlucky demons who had arrived in a hurry. A large amount of green blood quickly flowed out of the hole in Asura's throat. His eyes quickly dimmed, and he fell to the ground. Those demons who rushed here in a hurry, and the scene they happened to see was the tragic scene of the absolute powerhouse Asura falling to the ground and dying in their minds. For a moment, they were all dumbfounded. No. Mara turned her head away, a look of disbelief. Gora, on the other hand, is rejoicing in his heart and gloating greatly. Yingqi stood silent for a while, and after confirming that all the chi on Asura's body was gone, he put away the magic sword. Then he took the hands of Pasta and Lan Fang, ignored the tens of thousands of demons on the spot, and calmly walked in the direction of the gate of the demon world. Frightened by Yingqi's aura, the demons surrounding the front hurriedly retreated. After the 3 of them walked out for hundreds of meters, among the many demons, there was suddenly a skinny one-horned demon who shouted in a shrill voice, let's go up together. Kill this human and avenge Asura. The demon in the demon world is the most brainless and the most easily instigated race. As soon as he heard this, he immediately ran towards Yingqi like a chicken blood. Yingqi turned around, and didn't let go of Pasta and Lan Fang's hands. He directly opened his mouth and spewed out a pillar of golden energy light as thick as a rolling rod. Then, like high-pressure water extinguishing a fire, it began to sweep back and forth across the entire demon realm space. The one-horned demon who instigated the riot was even more focused on taking care of it. From the moment he spoke, Yingqi had already locked his breath, and even if he ran into the depths of the demon world, it was impossible to escape. A quarter of an hour later, the tens of thousands of demons who had gathered in the square did not escape, and all of them were wiped out by Yingqi's cannons. Looking at the mess of broken blood all over the ground, Yingqi shook his head and smiled. Other people's cannons are just cannons, and my cannons, it's really cannons, it can kill people. Seeing so many lives being deprived with their own eyes, the faces of Pasta and Lan Fang were naturally not very good looking. But the thought that these people were demons who wanted to kill them made my heart much more acceptable. And Mera and Gora, who had been hiding in the shadows and witnessed the whole process, were already cold all over their bodies, and they were so frightened that they didn't dare to move. When the three of them walked out of the gate of the demon realm, the sunset on the horizon had already dyed the vast land on the horizon. The king and his party were still waiting for them outside. Seeing the three of Yingqi appear, the king and queen hurriedly walked up and asked with concern, "Master Yingqi, what happened to the result?" Yingqi smiled slightly, "Don't worry, that Asura will never come to you again." Quote. Hearing this, the king and the queen looked at each other. I didn't understand what Inch was referring to for a while. Stupid, I don't understand. Lan Fang couldn't help but remind, Asura has been killed by brother Yingqi. Upon receiving this surprising news, the king and queen embraced happily. After parting, the king said excitedly, "This king has decided that a grand dinner will be held tonight to repay the great hero who saved our country, Master Yingqi." Inch hadn't said anything yet. Hooray! Long live Master Yingqi! The guards not far away had already taken the lead in the collective high tide. The banquet lasted until midnight. Sure enough, there were no more Asuras or demons to cause trouble. Yingqi, Pasta, and Lan Fang lived in the palace and returned to the road the next day when they ran out of lunch. In addition to the promised reward of 10 million souls, the queen also gave Pasta and Lan Fang some precious stones and pearl necklaces. Seeing the two girls happy to receive the gem, Yingqi secretly fell into her heart. The trio continued eastward. It's another 3 days. In the past 3 days, the three of them have been shuttling between the vast fields, forests, and mountains. There were no villages or towns or people. But what sleeps in the wilderness, and starves will not be. Yingqi carries the mansion and villa with him, and when he is hungry, he hunts the freshest and most tender game to eat. Pheasant, wild boar, bison, saber-toothed tiger, dinosaur, etc., have all tasted it all. In addition to the luxurious ice cream in the villa, drinks, there are also wild fruits on the trees. The days are more nourishing than they were in the temple of the gods. By noon on the 4th day, the three of them had run across a boulevard lined with snow-white orchids. The ground was covered with white petals, as if it was snowing. The beautiful scene was like a picture in a dream, which attracted the amazement of the two daughters, Pasta and Lan Fang. After passing through this orchid avenue, a remote and backward mountain village on the mountain road is in front of you. Inch didn't want to waste time. But Pasta wanted to go into the village and buy some fresh vegetables. When she mentioned this, Yingqi also felt that she was too greasy to eat. Naturally, I agreed. After entering the village, Pasta and Lan Fang found that the village was very strange. There was no one in the house or on the path. Yingqi said, "Maybe it's a festival that is being celebrated in this village." Most of the people gathered in the back mountain. Quote. There is a large clearing on the back hill. Yingqi could sense that a lot of faint qi was gathering there. Hearing that there might be a festival, Lan Fang, who likes to watch the excitement the most, hurriedly took Yingqi and Pasta to the back mountain. Who knows, the scene that catches the eye is not what they think at all. There was indeed a rich feast in the open space of the back mountain, but the only people who really enjoyed it seemed to be two young men with big stilted legs, drooping on the table, and lazily leaning on the back chairs. The two men are typical of Kilmat's style, both of them are wearing blue-gray leather jackets, and both are painted with characters. There is only one row on the top of his head, and the big man with a big red mogenshi hairstyle is painted in gold letters. And the young man with long brown-green hair and a red scarf wrapped around his neck has silver characters on his mouth. The other people around were busy, serving and waiting for these two young men. And they're all elderly villagers. Seeing these two people at the table, Yingqi's eyes suddenly became a little strange. Did the two guys, Goldenhorn and Silverhorn, have already run out to do evil so early? No wonder I always feel that the Orchid Avenue is a little familiar, and it turns out that I have come to this village. Hey, is this village entertaining VIPs? Lan Fang said with some surprise. Pasta saw a lot of fresh vegetables on display, most of which were freshly picked, apparently freshly picked. Overjoyed, he couldn't help but point to the bamboo baskets and said loudly, "Can you sell us some of these vegetables?" As soon as Pasta's words ended, all the villagers present, as well as the Goldenhorn and Silverhorn, all turned their eyes to her. There was a hint of panic in the eyes of the villagers. When Silverhorn saw Pasta and Lan Fang, he said excitedly, "Big brother, there are two beautiful girls." Goldenhorn nodded arrogantly, drank the wine in the bowl in one gulp, stood up and pointed at Pasta and Lan Fang, and said, "You two, hurry up and come over and drink with us." At this time, the old village chief with a gray beard suddenly stood up. "This is not good, they are just outsiders. Occasionally passing by this village." Quote. Yinzhao jumped in front of the old village chief at once, grabbed the old village chief's neckline, showed an arrogant demeanor of, "Eat, you," and shouted, "Stinky old man, you want to die, right?" Goldenhorn also stood up. "I think you want to turn it into a bar," Jin Zhao said, untying the yellow gourd from his waist. Seeing this action of the Goldenhorn, the old village chief was suddenly paralyzed with fright. Just when many villagers were frightened, Lan Fang suddenly laughed disdainfully. "It turns out that you are just two robbers." Jin Zhao looked at Lan Fang again, and when he was about to say something, Lan Fang had already flown up, instantly crossed a distance of more than 10 meters, and kicked Jin Zhao out directly with a sideways kick. Then came a fierce kick to the neck. Silverhorn rolled his eyes and fainted. The villagers were all stunned. Yingqi didn't expect that the more Lan Fang grew up, the more intense her personality became, and she walked over with a smile. Picked up the yellow gourd that the Goldenhorn had dropped on the ground. Directly pulled out the gourd plug and shouted two Goldenhorns and Silverhorns. Jin Zhao was kicked by Lan Fang, and his head was not fully awake, and Silverhorn was even more in a state of fainting. Where could he have time to answer? Not much. A large purple mist emerged from the yellow gourd, and slowly flew towards the two of them with Goldenhorns and Silverhorns, and after being completely wrapped, they shrunk and flew back into the gourd. Inki didn't care to plug the plug on. These two guys, when they spoke obscenities to Pasta and Lan Fang, Yingqi had already pronounced their death sentence in his heart. At the same time that Yingqi put away the yellow gourd, the villagers also broke out into earth-shattering cheers. After receiving a large number of vegetables from the villagers, the three of them embarked on the eastward journey again. In the blink of an eye, another 7 days passed in a flash. The further east you go, the stronger the atmosphere of the ancient oriental country becomes. Pasta and Lan Fang didn't feel anything yet, but Inki felt unusually kind. The sun is rising. On the official road outside the capital. Outside a shabby liquor store. A large number of people in the capital gathered here, watching the excitement with great interest. The three of Yingqi, who had just arrived here, happened to witness this scene. Among the three, Lan Fang, who loves to watch the excitement the most, sees that her heart is like being tickled by a kitten, pestering Yingqi and Pasta. "You must come forward to find out." Inki reluctantly agreed. But, because there were so many onlookers, it was difficult to squeeze to the front for a while. Lan Fang had an idea, took out a handful of salt from his pocket, threw it to the side, and then shouted, "Pick up the money." Hearing that there was money to pick up, the crowd who was still watching the excitement was in an uproar. Where could they still take care of the onlookers? A swarm of bees rushed to the location where Lan Fang threw the money. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lan Fang immediately pulled Yingqi and Pasta to occupy the best onlooker position. After standing firmly, Lan Fang also smiled proudly at the few stunned people inside. Not for a while. Lan Fang's hundreds of souls in cash were all picked up. The crowd again surrounded the liquor store. The crowd was watching, and there were 3 groups of people. Among them, the short, stocky, middle-aged and elderly man in his 50s is the owner of this wine shop. Standing opposite the owner of the liquor store is a father and daughter. The father was unkempt and smelled of unpleasant acidity. His daughter was about 6 or 7 years old, with lovely buns, a red face, and a pair of royal blue eyes which were very beautiful. But at this moment, the sapphire-like eyes were full of fear. A pair of small hands were tightly grasping the corners of his father's clothes. And in the middle of the owner of the liquor store and the father and daughter, there was also a middle-aged strong man with a fierce face and shirtless and only a red vest. I only heard the middle-aged strong man urging impatiently, "Zhou Liang, I don't have the time to continue wasting time with you here. Either you hurry up and pay off the gambling debt of 100,000 souls, or you give my daughter to me, otherwise, beware of my fists being merciless." Quote. The unkempt father shrank unnaturally when he heard the words. Obviously, he has suffered from middle-aged strong men. He hurriedly looked at the short and fat wine shop owner, and said hurriedly, "Boss Wang, it's only 100,000 souls, you can agree to come down. Think about it, my daughter follows you, not only is it equivalent to one more runner, but also can be your daughter-in-law when she grows up. It couldn't be better." Quote. Zhou Liang knew that if his daughter was taken away by a middle-aged strong man, she would definitely be sold into the hook pen. It was definitely a fire pit with no way back. In comparison, although it is a little wrong to let her daughter follow an old widower, at least she can live a normal life. This is also the last thing he, an unscrupulous gambler who has no future and has lost hope in life, can do for his daughter. Zhou Liang's words obviously made the owner of the wine shop a little moved. But he thought about it and insisted, "I am only willing to give 50,000 souls, if you don't agree, forget it." Quote. The words of the owner of the wine shop couldn't help but make Zhou Liang a little desperate. At this time, the middle-aged strong man finally smiled and said, "Zhou Liang, don't waste any more time. Boss Wang is only willing to give 50,000 yuan, and the remaining 50,000 yuan, where are you going to raise it? It can also save the pain of a meal." Quote. As soon as the middle-aged strong man's words fell, Lan Fang, who had just entered the state of watching the play, had already exclaimed, "What? You actually want to buy and sell this little girl? I will never allow it." Everyone couldn't help but turn their eyes to her. The middle-aged strong man looked at Lan Fang with a smile. "Oh, little girl, then you will pay back this money for him." Provoked by the middle-aged strong man, Lan Fang stiffened his neck and said, "I'll just pay it back. 100,000 souls, is it a lot? Brother Yingqi gives me more than 100,000 pocket money every month." Quote. As soon as Lan Fang's words came out, everyone present was dumbfounded. Just as Lan Fang was about to pay for it, Pasta suddenly stopped her. She is older than Lan Fang, and she has seen the dark side of society, and she has more than Lan Fang. Lan Fang's generosity this time can only solve the little girl's temporary crisis. It won't be long before his scumbag gambling father is still there, and he will still end up like this. Glanced at Zhou Liang with disgust, and said coldly, 100,000 souls, is it enough to buy your daughter? Zhou Liang didn't expect that there would be a chance to survive in a desperate situation, so he nodded and said, "Enough, enough. It would be great if my daughter had the opportunity to follow a rich family." Pasta took out the universal capsule containing the cash box, opened it, took out 13 turns from it, and threw it to Zhou Liang. "There are a total of 130,000 souls in it. I hope that after you take this money, you can change your life and become a new person. When you are really at peace, come and pick up your daughter from us." Thank you, Zhou Liang said gratefully. Zhou Liang hurriedly returned the 100,000 souls to the middle-aged strong man, who glared at Pasta and Lan Fang hatefully, and walked away in a huff. Boss Wang of the wine store was full of regret. The little girl was still tightly holding on to the corners of Zhou Liang's clothes, but he shook them off. Then he took the extra 30,000 souls and walked away without looking back. I don't even ask how to find the 3 of Yingqi in the future. I can still hear him say, "I can go and turn the book again." Seeing that the little girl wanted to cry but didn't dare to cry, Pasta hurriedly hugged her in distress, and Lan Fang was also clumsily comforting beside her. There was no bustle to see, and the people around quickly dispersed. Yingqi looked helplessly at the new members, and didn't know how to complain in his heart. Yuelai restaurant in the capital. A good location on the second floor facing the window. The 4 of them ordered a table full of Beijing dishes. The little girl Zhou Anqi ate her meal silently and quickly. Apparently starving. Pasta pulled Lan Fang and told her what she was doing just now. Help her grow her experience. Yingqi, who was already full, looked out the window leisurely. Look at the pedestrians on the street who are dressed in clothes that look like ancient Chinese style. Suddenly, a voice at the top of the staircase caught his attention. Satan, move quickly. Your master and I are about to starve to death. A tall and strong man with a strong physique, wearing a tight-fitting suit, his hair combed meticulously, obviously did not look like a person from the capital, and shouted in a rough voice. Got it, master. A young man's voice quickly came from downstairs. Satan. Yingqi was stunned for a moment, took his eyes back from the window, and put it back in the restaurant. At this moment, a young man with a delicate face and slightly dark skin appeared to be very energetic, and ran up from the staircase. Master, I've already ordered it. It's your favorite Beijing food. Well, good job. Thanks for watching.